It's a path to nowhere to meet with the current head of administration, to put it carefully. It's possible. I never rejected it. If this meeting is well prepared and will lead to some positive possible results. Donald asked me if it is possible to hold such a meeting. I said yes, it is possible. If Zelensky is ready, he should come to Moscow and the meeting will take place.
Our Europe correspondent Oliver Crook has the latest. Ollie, I don't know what you made of that. Surely Zelensky would never set foot in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to unpack from that statement from Vladimir Putin. I mean, you know, this is somebody who, from the first days of the war, when there were reports of basically hit squads going around Kyiv trying to find Zelensky and kill him that were eventually neutralized by the Ukrainians, it's very hard to imagine Zelensky putting himself into a position to go to Moscow, particularly when Putin says in the same breath that basically nothing can be achieved in a conversation with this administration within Ukraine. That being said, we've seen basically the new Zelensky tactic ever since the catastrophic Oval Office visit, which is that basically whenever Trump says jump, he says how high and then goes even further. You'll remember there were these discussions about a potential meeting in Turkey. Basically, Zelensky immediately got on the plane and said, listen, I'm here in Turkey. I'm ready to meet Putin. So, you know, maybe in the sort of showmanship of Zelensky, it's something that he would consider, but it's very, very hard to imagine such a thing. But again, the main audience here is Donald Trump. And the question about whether or not Donald Trump sees there being any progress here with Russia and how he feels about Vladimir Putin at the moment, which is what he was asked yesterday in a press conference. Have a listen to what Trump had to say about his message to Vladimir Putin.
I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see things happen.
And we can say that there's already some unhappiness that has been displayed by the Trump administration in the form of the 50% tariffs that have been put on India for continuing to buy Russian crude. Trump indicated yesterday that this was only phase one of what a 2 to 3 phase process could be in ramping up the pressure potentially on Russia. That being said, we're reaching this moment here in the context of Russia where Putin is really being embraced on many places in the global stage. You saw him in China. You saw him at that military parade embracing Kim Jong-un. A few days earlier, holding hands with Modi. All of this we know that Trump is observing from the White House and from the Oval Office and trying to determine whether or not, as the Europeans think, Putin is just playing games and he's not being serious about advancing any peace process in Ukraine.
Yeah, who could forget the handhold moment? And Trump also kind of bristling when asked about why he hadn't put more pressure on Putin since the Alaska summit. But meanwhile, we've got this coalition of the willing meeting happening between European leaders today. What should we expect from that, Ollie?
Yeah, so that's being chaired by Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer in Paris, and this is the sort of broad coalition of European nations that are basically trying to work out what the day after looks like in Ukraine. There's part of it which is trying to put more pressure on Russia, but it is this idea of the boots on the ground and the backstop force that could potentially be within Ukraine to basically guarantee that there is no further incursion on by the Russians on Ukraine in the event of a peace negotiation. The question is, what is this coalition of the willing to do? We have not yet had the contours of what a peacekeeping force would look like, who would participate in it, what its actual function is. But these are the things that are going to be discussed further today in Paris. That being said, Lizzie, all of these questions about what a peacekeeping force are completely irrelevant if there is no peace and if there is no advancement towards peace, which is why they're going to try also to get Donald Trump on the phone, as they did at the last one of these meetings a few months ago, to try to strategize and see if they can get him on board and speaking in the same voice with the Europeans.
Well, yeah, we already had President Trump meeting the Polish president yesterday in Washington. Of course, he's a populist, the Polish president, as well. Was their conversation, Ollie, a good omen for a potentially US-backed security backstop for Ukraine?
Yeah, Lizzie, what was really interesting about this discussion between Donald Trump and the new Polish president, and just to remind everybody, this is a sort of right-wing candidate that sort of surprisingly won the Polish election, really out of step with Donald Tusk and the sort of pro-European government that he is running. But it's sort of a mixed blessing for the Europeans. As unhappy as they may be about Karol Nawrocki being president of Poland, he's very aligned with Donald Trump. And what he got from Donald Trump is something that cannot be sort of undervalued, which is the idea that Trump said he's actually willing not only to not take any of the U.S. troops out of Poland. There are 10,000 U.S. troops stationed in Poland. He's willing to deploy more troops to Poland from the United States if the Polish would want that. And that is key, Lizzie, because in the next couple of months, the United States is going to do a strategic review of their military global presence. The fear for the Europeans, which is why you've seen so much pressure from NATO on getting that spending up, is that they're going to detract and pull forces out of Europe. There are about 85,000 U.S. troops across Europe, 40,000 of those in Germany. And what Trump said yesterday is that though we may be moving troops from other places, we're actually willing to commit more troops to Poland, and that is going to be something that's very welcome from the Polish and the European community as well.